Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa says all South Africans are inheritors and beneficiaries from the struggle that was waged by the African National Congress against the apartheid government. He was speaking in a wreath-laying ceremony at the grave of former ANC Treasurer General and SA Communist Party General Secretary Moses Kotane. Yesterday marked 114 years since the ANC was founded in 1912, but its main celebrations are going to be held at the Moruleng Stadium, and that's tomorrow, making it the oldest liberation movement in Africa. The party has been facing challenges, including electoral losses and public discontent. But to talk a little bit more about what the significance of this anniversary and the trajectory of African liberation movements are in the post-independence, we are joined by SABC News specialist contributor Sophie Mokoena and a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, Thandi Modise. Lovely to have both of you and looking forward to the conversation. But let me begin with you, Modise. What is the significance of this anniversary? And does this offer the ANC a chance to actually look at itself and reflect on where it's at?
I think this year in particular, when you look at the road we've traveled in the last 5 years, is very important for the ANC. This year, this anniversary is not just about celebrating. It is supposed to enable us to really look at ourselves. Have we done well? Where have we gone wrong? What can we correct? What stances have we missed? And therefore, as we celebrate, we also must remember that the liberation movements of Africa are also looking at us because they consider us as the mother of liberation movements in the continent. And therefore, there is a burden that is on the ANC to really look at itself, self-criticize, self-correct, and to deliver unto South Africans what we promised. Firstly, we promised unity at our formation in Bloemfontein. Then we took to the bush. Then we said that we will make sure that our people are self-sustaining, jobs will be provided, education will be provided, so that the dignity of all South Africans is not lopsided, so that everybody feels equal. So we need to go back, not too far. We need to actually, because policy-wise we are okay, we need to start implementing what we have been deliberating on, what we have adopted. And we need to be very honest and to look at ourselves, so those of us who are messing up, and to begin to have the guts to say to those who are messing up, the municipalities, the provinces, to say, please get the hell out of the ANC. Give us a chance to serve the ANC well.
I suppose, I mean, I could quiz you on that a lot, and we will as we go along. But I've got Sophie Mokoena in studio with us as well. Sophie, what do you think? I mean, we hear what we obviously have heard from the ANC, the trajectory that they were on, what they are meant to be doing for the country. But the bottom line is that we look at where we are as a country right now, and many people are feeling incredibly despondent. And yes, we can tell people, as to quote Modise, get the hell out of the ANC. But surely the ANC should be the ones getting rid of them. But let's get your opinions.
Well, I think the issue here is, as the oldest liberation organization on the continent, what kind of leadership does ANC want to provide on the continent? It has to be a party that sets the tone in terms of being exemplary, in terms of its leadership and what it does in terms of its mandate or serving the people of South Africa and by extension the people on the continent. And therefore, the challenges they know where they veered off the road. They know what are the issues people don't want. They just have to act and implement, because they must bear in mind the forebears in 1912 who didn't only converge as South Africans, but even people from the continent came. That is why it was called African Native Congress, African. And therefore, it has to continue to look at broader issues, but not just look and produce documents and statements. It must act in the right manner. Right now, there are too many challenges and there are too many mistakes. And if it doesn't act differently, it will continue to lose support, as we saw with the 2024 elections. And therefore, it is up to the ANC to decide whether it wants to do what it was meant for when it was launched in 1912, or it has just become another political party on the continent that is embroiled in corruption and all the wrongdoings. It can't be just people talking. They must act.
Yeah, and these are important points because, Modise, I want you to pick up on a few of them, but perhaps what we can also add into this, because we look at a liberation movement on the continent, and that's no small feat to be the oldest liberation movement on the continent, and it has been, it's a huge accolade and a big label to carry with you. However, when we look at the youth, we look at what they believe in. I mean, many of these, the young voting public, after 1994, they pretty much so are taking up the biggest chunk of the electorate. They look back and they think to themselves, okay, that was then, but now, what are you doing for us now? And what kind of a country are we inheriting? And what are you going to do to make my life better? These are the kind of questions that voters are asking. So perhaps, Modise, you want to weigh on that a bit?
Well, I missed quite a bit because I got kicked out. But as a South African, yes, I would demand more from a liberation movement. I would demand more from the people who inherited a vehicle for the people's power. I would demand more for the unity of the citizens of South Africa. I would demand more dignity for the elderly and the people in the rural areas. And what I said was, can us in the leadership of the ANC take resolutions, implement them, ensure that we are all even-handed. And it is also important when you get into a national organization to be even-handed, that whatever resources we have are spread even-handedly so that your departments are equally funded according to their needs. And we always know that the state does not always get the resources that they need to do everything all at the same time. But we need to find a way where we can go back to our people and say, this is the little bit that we have, and open our books and be honest about it. This is what we can execute in this given time. This is why we are unable to execute this. Because you need never, as a leader, to lose trust between yourself and the people that you lead. So we must fight to claw back, to regain that trust for the dignity, not only of South Africa amongst the other nations, but for the citizens of South Africa, to feel heard, to feel loved, to feel that their ways are open as equal in any province as in other way.
Ma'am Sophie, let's get a comment from you on this as well, because we look across Africa and liberation movements have struggled once they're in government, and we're seeing a very similar path. I mean, South Africa is ruled by coalitions at the moment, and this is something that we can see. I mean, this is what we are experiencing right now, and we are hearing from the ANC that they want to, rectify their ways, look at what they're doing. But from what you have seen, Ms. Sophie, do liberation movements need a complete generational renewal if they're actually to remain relevant?
Conscious renewal, because they know what are the needs of their respective countries. They have to deliver. Unfortunately, the issue of corruption, it is exactly what has destroyed all the liberation organizations. They have lost credibility. Some of them are still in power and with huge numbers in terms of percentage in their parliament. But how do they get to that? They have to devise dubious means to remain in power because of what leadership and those who are in possession of power after independence have done. We know, in the case in point, South Africa, ANC knows very well that much as people were beginning to be disgruntled with slow pace of delivery, but people were still keeping in mind that to do away with apartheid, it's not going to be easy. But the issue of corruption became a major problem for the ANC. You can't talk about all what we were talking about as media during the state capture, and you think people will be quiet. Right now, you look at what's coming out of the commission as it relates to investigations with the police, the parliamentary committee, whether the commission. People are watching, and you look at the numbers on YouTube, on television, when those hearings are being conducted, people have interest, and they assimilate or they get information, and it is contributing to the disgruntlement and people losing hope. And therefore, this is what has happened in many countries. There was no reason for the ANC to have experienced these challenges because South Africa was last to be liberated. We saw what happened to many liberation organizations, that some of them have died. And there was no reason because you have case studies. And I think ANC must be honest with itself, whether it will continue to be dominant or what, but the reality is they must remember why this movement was launched by the forebears and return back to the core values and deliver. People want delivery. People want their lives to change. And therefore, that's all what they have to do right now, working with other parties that are there in government of national unity. At local government elections, we might see more coalitions work with whoever will be there as South Africans and deliver for people of the country.
Yeah. The reality is, and again, I pick up on a lot of what you're saying, Sophie, and Modise, we bring this one to you as well, just to perhaps talk to some of the issues that South Africans feel. And I think it's a trust deficit. And I think even in your answers, you have admitted to that. I mean, you bring up what we're seeing through commissions that happened at the end of last year that will continue this year when it comes to our policing and justice systems. We saw what happened with the Zondo Commission, and yet we still wait to see mass accountability on that one. And these are members within the ranks of the ANC, and the people are tired of this because the trust, and that I think is the biggest issue, and perhaps we can talk to that, regaining the trust of the voter, because dropping below 50% is, I imagine, one of your greatest disappointments that you have seen, Modise, in the history of the ANC. But let's talk to how you regain that trust. What do you do? How do we move forward on accountability and cleanse the party?
Look, Leanne, you don't talk about renewal, you do it. You go back to who becomes a member of your party. What are the values that you want to see extended by this newcomer into the ANC? You are consistent in the applications of your rules. It is not this one gets this and this one gets that. You are even-handed in the spreading of the thin cake called the budget of the country, so that there is no competition between municipalities, between provinces. You emphasize the rights of those who cannot do anything for themselves, the children, the disabled, the aged. You make sure that you cover those constituencies with as honest people as you can. And if you find that a cadre very much loved is no longer capable of reflecting the values of the ANC, you show them the door very politely, so that you do not have people who are saying, I am despondent and I'm sitting back because you're not even-handed. So that you do not have people thinking that, in fact, we can go back to Sodom because it was better there. So that as I enter as a new member of the ANC, I go through a rigid and strict training session that says, if These are the do's and the don'ts. In fact, if you look at what has happened in Namibia, I have hope about the ANC because they went back to their procedures and they upheld them very strictly. They have regained ground. So it can happen to yes, so we've got to absolutely remember who we are. We've got to set both our people through the hard times, through the happy times. We've got to remember that a leader, Rona Batswana, eats last. You prioritize those who are helpless, you help those who don't have, those that are able, you can give them space to expand themselves. But the priority of any government is to be the mother hen, to look after those that really need to be taken into safety nets, development of the youth, and not the give in to, because this party is doing this way, I'm going to do it this way. I think we owe it to South Africans, we owe it to this continent to continue upright, to continue to push, to make sure that people feel equal, not only in South Africa. We've been doing very well even in the region, but they usually say charity must begin at home. We must relook at how we spend our money. We must relook who is spending our money where. We must be able to make sure that if the money is not well spent, we must also take into consideration the many, what are these things that the President has been setting up, commissions. Follow up on those resolutions. Make sure that we don't spend money and time going through weeks and months of hearings and then nothing happens. So for me, it is not that difficult for the ANC to regain power. But also we must remember, the ANC we cannot only cry. The South African citizen still, even if the ANC has played this pivotal role in clearing the field for them, still has the right to choose who we should stand with. Yeah. So yes, it might be that the collisions are a thing in the future, but we need to try as the ANC on our own to regain our strength by remembering our values, by strengthening our weakness, by being as honest and as expeditious as we can to deliver the services to our people. And it can't just be the services as in what do you need to eat. It must also be that we become the moral compass. We can be held before whoever and we stand for what is right and what is truthful.
Well, it's certainly, I mean, it's 3 decades, and one would think that this would be strengthened as opposed to, unfortunately, tainted. And that unfortunately is the reality, because we look at the reputation. And Sophie, I want to bring you into this, because I know you focus a lot on international news and international relations. You know, the ANC was once a revered government that was a movement that struggled for governance. That's very much so how they were remembered and looked at. It was morally admired for its past, but it seems to be questioned at the moment for its present. And a lot of people are looking and judging the ANC, but how they have governed South Africa and the economics of South Africa and the life that the people are leading right now. If we look at international relations, how are we doing? With the ANC at the helm, how do we look?
Well, I think these are difficult times for any country, and any leader can attest to that around the world. And therefore, South Africa is not immune from being under pressure, like all countries are under pressure right now. But the ANC has continued with its foreign policy anchored around peace and security, which is the right thing, fight for international law, human rights, and all of that. And when you look at the continent, to be honest, what we do in South Africa, particularly the government, some people question, why do you give houses free? Why do you help with water? Why do you do this and that? And when you look at access to certain needs, South Africa is still better than many other countries on the continent. But that's not enough, because South Africans know that the country can do better. And therefore, the marching order is simple: do the right thing.
Yeah.
put the right people in right positions. Those people must know that they are there to serve the people, not their families, as we have seen previously, and not their friends. And just do the right thing.
Okay.
Be ethical in your conduct and be exemplary when you are given leadership. So there's still people, many around the world, who respect South Africa. It's a fact. But I think there's a lot that can be done.
All right, let's leave it there. Of course, SABC News specialist contributor Sophie Mokoena and member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, Thandi Modise, talking to us about the January 8th statement. That, of course, is the celebration of the birthday of the ANC. 1912 was the formation, and, of course, we will hear the party president addressing tomorrow's celebration.